Doug, somebody else.
All right, Ken, you ready?
Yep.
I'd like to call to order the December 8th, 2016 Board of Adjustment meeting. Roll call, please.
Yep. Hanson?
Here.
Shriver?
Here.
Stein?
Here.
Dolly?
Here.
McGuire?
Here.
Arnold and Stonebarger are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the November 10th, 2016 minutes. Can I get a motion in a second?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Guire, second by Mr. Hanson. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2 is applicants Michael and Angela Beavers, permit number 17137, repealing the zoning ordinance, seeking a variance for a unattached garage in R1 single-family district at 1101 Skyline Drive.
Correct. Applicant was submitted requesting to construct a non-conforming 832 square foot, 26 by 32 unattached garage on a 21,030 square foot parcel located in the R1 single family residential district. Said structure proposed to be constructed 18 feet from the front south property line where 25 setback is required. This particular application has come before the board in 2011. Application was made for this garage. 14-foot setback and was denied. In 2014, this same application, similar application came back for a 15-foot setback and was denied. And now the applicant is again before you. There is sufficient buildable area on this 21,030 square foot lot to construct a compliant garage of equal or greater area without variance. In addition to the non-compliant setback, 18 feet is also not sufficient off-street parking length in front of a proposed garage, as any vehicle parked there will encroach into the right-of-way and over the pedestrian walkway required to be improved with a 4-foot concrete sidewalk. Note 20 feet is the minimum parking space length required in front of garage doors, opening onto a right-of-way, etc. If applicant is endorsed, the board is authorized to require fulfillment of any of all lacking boulevard infrastructure requirements in conjunction with any structural improvements authorized by building permit. I have been contacted by a number of the public, and they said they would probably be here, so I do anticipate that. It was public notice and as required.
Thank you, Ken. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the variance.
I'm Don Fox, and I can't yell loud enough.
No, they record you, Don, so.
Oh, okay. I'm Don Fox, and I live right below the hill.
I will back it up so they can see where you're
Yeah,
at. This is Don's house right here.
right. And I told Ken, originally I was against this, and I just met with Mike, and the reason I was against it had more to do with landscaping and so on, because the last several years, we've lost some trees and so on, so it kind of opened it up. So I thought with this, it was going to change how it would look down there and everything, but talking with Mike and so on, I've changed my mind. I feel comfortable with what he has in mind to do that would kind of give us privacy and give him what he wants. So I just want to say that because I told Ken that and called him I was against it, but in meeting with Mike, it just didn't work out before, but we've talked, so I feel comfortable with what he's planning on doing and the landscaping and the trees and so on. So with that, just let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anyone else?
Mike Beavers and my wife and Angie are the ones that are requesting the variance on the setback of the property lines. When we applied last, we had it at, was it 15 feet, correct, Ken? And at that time, the board had a split decision due to the fact that if they did extend the sidewalk up from the west to the east up the hill, that there wouldn't have been enough space for a full-size vehicle to park between the front face of the garage and the sidewalk. And I believe it was the board's recommendation at that time to do the 18-foot variance on the setback. The reason we went with the 15-foot last time was that would have lined up with the south edge of our third stall of our current garage. We just did it in line with that structure. But due to the board's recommendation from the previous submission, we have moved it back 18 feet to what it was recommended. And as Don mentioned, we'd prefer not to move it any further back into our property due to the fact that there is a a nice tree there that's not only visually aesthetic for ourselves, but for many of our neighbors. And the tree I'm referring to is this one right here. And it's visually, like I said, aesthetic for us, and for Don, and for I imagine for the Haug family that are here also. They may appreciate that. It kind of supports some privacy for all of our backyards. And I'm not sure. I think that's maybe all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in the public hearing? Come on, if you can step up, state your name for the record.
My name is Lauren Haug, and I lived right next to the garage that's gonna be built on the west side right there, yeah. And I have no problem with him building that garage there. It's perfectly okay with me.
Thank you. Ken, I have one question. As far as the peak of the roof, the downhill side's going to go toward Haug's. Did he give you a diagram of the building or what the building looks? Got rain gutters on that side to keep the water as best he can away from the Haug property?
Come back up here for a second. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
That's one thing we're always concerned of is when you're, in this case, you're not encroaching on his lot line any further than necessary.
I believe the roof line will go north and south. I had a Brinkman survey come over and shoot elevations, and we spoke in regards to that. He thought the water shed off of the building would be a non-issue as long as we put gutters along the side.
Okay. And you intend on doing that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the garage can't be located 7 feet farther north then because of that tree? You're gonna,
That would be our preference, Mr. Stein, just because, like I said, the aesthetics and, the visual barriers from the backyard and those sorts of things. If we moved it back, it would encroach upon that tree and probably have to remove it at 7 feet.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I went out there last fall,
Sure.
and for one reason I was asked to go out and look at it. I went out and looked at it, and I actually walked around there and looked. If you move that garage further back, then it would be more visible from the Haug and Fox property than it would be if we leave it where it is. They'd look out their windows and they'd see the side of your building,
You're
correct?
correct. The further we move it back into our property line, when you're talking to the north,
The more visual
the more
encroachment
visual
you would have on
encroachment
them.
there would be for all neighbors involved.
That's what I looked at when I went there. I kind of walked around and looked and went, I get it now. I see why the neighbors would prefer to have it closer to the street than closer to their
Yeah.
rear yard.
It's
Because when
further
they,
away from their
yeah.
property lines, and just due to the elevation changes that take place back there, the further we moved it to the north, the more visual.
and there is an
elevation
extremely steep slope in that backyard.
And
area.
that's
If you
lined,
walk it, yes, you will notice it.
Mike, that's lined up with your third garage there
No,
then?
It's not, Mr. Albertson. The original proposal a few years back was in line. It was the 15 feet. This would actually be 3 feet setback to the north farther, due to the fact that the board's recommendation, I believe at that time, was for 18 feet. If they ever did extend the sidewalk from the Haugs up through here, which, yeah, that was the recommendation.
And then you can or can't park a car there? Is there enough room if you move it back down where it is?
That's my
You
understanding.
can park a car in there?
Yes, that's
Okay.
not the intent, but
Yeah.
to park a vehicle on the garage
So it wouldn't be
space
on the
there.
sidewalk?
Correct.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
A regular sized car would be fine, but a pickup or anything else would encroach on the sidewalk at 18 feet.
Okay.
I think most big pickups nowadays like 22, aren't they, Ken?
Yeah.
All right, anyone else speak in the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for further discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Albertson, second by Mr. McGuire. Discussion, anyone have any questions? Like I said, I went up and took a look at it, and I do see why the neighbors would prefer not to look out the window and see a garage if they could. Seeing no discussion, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed, motion carries.
Just a clarification, the waiver right to protest for the
Yeah,
sidewalk?
yeah, as always, we agreed. Really, we're right to protest on sidewalk. If the sidewalk is requested to go north, they'll have to put that sidewalk in, finish sidewalk to top.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Second item on the agenda, Edward Spies for Spies Corporation, permit number 17138, it's appealing zoning ordinance for the property at 920 3rd Street Southeast.
Again, application was submitted requesting to construct a non-conforming 12,000 square foot, 60 by 200 foot commercial building on a 62,700 square foot parcel located in the C3 Highway Commercial District. Said structure proposed to be constructed 0 feet from the west property line where a minimum of 40 feet setback is required. Also without boulevard improvements where a minimum of 15 feet of grass boulevard area with 1 tree per 50 foot of frontage is required. In August 2016, Spice Corporation successfully petitioned to vacate the west portion of the 10th Avenue South public right-of-way that lies between Block 2 of Paulson's Addition and Block 2 of the South Side Addition. These Spice Corporation properties gain 9,900 square feet, 60 by 165 of buildable area with the vacation of the right-of-way. Currently, a non-conforming 3,767 square foot office building exists on the north side of the property. Minus this structure, there is now approximately 29,372 square feet of compliant buildable area available on this property within the structured districts. If application is endorsed, this board has the authority to require fulfillment of any of all lacking boulevard infrastructure requirements in conjunction with any structural improvements authorized by building permit.
Thank you, Ken.
Actually, I have not been contacted by anyone with regard to this issue, so.
All the cards and everything have been sent out in
Yep.
return.
It's all public notice was legally done and done.
Thanks. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the permit. Ken, I have a question. On the south side, the variance isn't for the south side because that property's been vacated, correct?
Correct, yeah, there is
So there's,
no setback.
so what we're talking about is what street is that, Third-ish? Is that right there?
Yes, this is Third Street, yes.
So
And
it's
so
a-
the variance they're talking about is just this west face of the building.
So the zero setback is on Third Street side?
Correct.
Okay, I looked at this, will you kick up the flood map on it too? And explain to us how the building requirements change with flood insurance, or with floodplain?
Okay, so you can see the red area here within the floodplain. As this is a non-residential construction, they have the option of either building this at whether the finished floor is in or out of it. They can do flood-proof construction or flood-resistant construction that has to be certified by an engineer that do it. Or they have the option of elevating it to above the base flood elevation, which they may want to do anyway, because this end is already out, even if they just run that flat level, more than likely. Well, it has to be 1 foot above. So then they'd have to build it up to do that, so.
So in the non-flood area, assuming that's right at the flood level, they'd have to raise it up.
In there? Okay. Yep. Probably would build it up.
Because that's the question I had is, when I looked at the layout of it, I went, well, the doors are going to face Third Street. So my thought was if anytime somebody's going to back in or out of there, they're going to back across the public right away. If they stop to take anything in or out of there, they'd actually be parked on the street. How is that? That's gravel right now, correct?
Currently, yes.
But we've got a lot of buildings down in that area that look like they were zero lot lined. Any idea how old some of those buildings are, Ken? They have a zero setback.
Edward probably know.
The Savings Star units we have back there, the first one was probably built in the late 80s.
Okay.
I don't know when Lonnie put his in, but his in were before ours.
Zero put in the 80s sometime, you think?
Shane, your thought on, from an engineering standpoint, that road's a gravel road. Where is the development to the south on 81 from there?
Okay, it's about 2 blocks south.
And we vacated 10th coming across, but Third
Right.
going south is still,
So during the discussions at both the planning commission level and the city council level, there was 2 separate vacations of 10th Avenue South. And through each of those processes, we stressed that it's the intention of the city to have Third Street Southeast develop south of 212 and become part of the corridor that reaches down to that current development of the theater area. And I guess Pete can put my screen up a minute, because I have a larger picture out here. So Third Street is this piece north and south, and the development is currently down here at the bottom of my screen. Third Street would be extended all the way down to or near that intersection, and then Fourth Street would also be developed eventually, with the anticipation that the cement plant someday may not be there. And 11th Street will be the main connector back out onto Highway 81. So encroaching in this right-of-way or near this right-of-way.
11th Avenue would be the one.
11th Avenue,
Okay.
excuse me. Yep, 11th Avenue. So encroaching in this Third Street against that right-of-way may compromise the future use of, or intended use of, for traveling through there. I have apprehensions of doing a zero setback along that. We do have other storage units in the community that were built similarly, but they come with headaches and, problems.
Ed, that's 106, the depth of that lot is 165. Was it more the zero setback because that's kind of what's been going on down in that area? Or do you have is there a dying need that you have to be at zero? Could a guy be back 20?
Well, the reason we asked for it is because there are 6 buildings. I think I said 5 in the letter, but I believe there's 6 that are at zero setback now. And we just thought it would, obviously, the less setback we have, the more we can accommodate trucks and cars on our property.
Can you zoom in on that a second, Ken?
So I want to be clear
Okay.
on that. The other zero setbacks have no driveways or garages out onto Third Street.
That's kind of what I was gonna have him zoom in and show that, because I looked at that too. And I don't know if those other units have doors facing Third, but that one right by go left and up one building. That one there probably, it's not on Third, but it's a different street there, but those probably are opening up onto a zero setback. But all the ones probably do, well, both of those do that, one to the south and the one to the north. Those two do open up onto a public right-of-way with a zero setback, but
There again, that's a short stub of a road
Correct.
that's never gonna get developed.
correct, I just wanted to point that one out. I get what you're doing back there.
Shane, how wide is that? How wide is Third? I mean,
The right-of-way is 80 feet,
oh,
which is our standard commercial roadway, right-of-way.
So the question would be to still have future use of the entire lot. What if we push that building back far enough, at least that if somebody is pulling in or out of there, they're staying on private property, not necessarily the roadway?
Well, in our original drawing, there's doors on the east and west side.
Both sides, yeah, I saw that.
So, like I say, that's why we asked for that setback variance, because, you run into the city, that city alley there behind all those, to the east of those trees. And it just, that's the reason we did it, just be able to accommodate storage on the backside too.
And like we spoke earlier, Ken, the average vehicle is somewhere between 18 and 22 feet pulling in. And I think I did look at the diagram, most of those stalls, they're not 60 foot deep. A couple of them were going to be up on the end where you get a bigger unit in there, but most of them are 30s, probably.
And that's not final, that's just.
Okay. Just
company-
what you
some
used.
proposals,
Okay.
but, yeah, a couple of them are 60 feet and the rest of them are
Okay.
other configurations.
Anyone else have any questions for them, thoughts? I mean, because they're coming for a zero setback, and it looks like the city's not very comfortable with the zero setback, so it's going to have to be something between 0 and 40. I don't want to send them home with nothing specifically, but
A 40-foot setback would effectively make the property unusable then.
no, I can see that where the realistic use of the property, if somewhere between 0 and 40, it has to be in there. 20?
I think, Pat, if you're,
Mhm.
if you're concerned with the 40 and the length of a truck, we could redraw it and maybe try 20 feet.
Yeah, that's the angle that I was, because I think, Shane, you're okay with, possibly because there's a future street there, if that building's 20 foot back, then there's not quite as much of an encroachment, routine encroachment onto that city right away, with vehicles coming and going.
We haven't had the request yet either, but I'm assuming that there will be a request for a continuous driveway through that, and we wouldn't support that either. I mean, there needs to be some limited access with anticipation of other park, or, traffic patterns and so forth through there. So 20 feet or more of a setback is certainly, 20 feet might be reasonable, but, he has 105 feet remaining in the rest of the lot if he gets the 0 setback. So I don't know how that would compromise using it if you moved it even closer to the 40, but, you're gonna have equal space on either side of the building then.
Thoughts down there?
How many buildings have just a 0 setback in there? I understand about the doors, but how many other buildings are, I'm thinking about in terms of that road going through there, and, I mean, are there, did you say 6? That have 0
Yeah,
setback?
you're looking at me. I thought you were looking for somebody else.
No,
for
I
an
don't,
answer. It is 6.
I'm just asking, I don't know.
It is
who I'm
6
talking to.
currently.
What was your thought process ever to put another building on the east side of that lot too,
I guess
potentially?
I'd have to say no at this time, we just haven't.
Just the one you're thinking?
I guess.
Any other questions, discussion? Anyone else to speak in the public hearing? With that, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
I'd make a motion.
The motion is,
For the sake of conversation, to build it as it's recommended. And then the variance could come in to do the 20-foot back.
then we'd have to modify your motion.
Yeah. Just to get the conversation going.
Motion by Mr. Albertson, do I have a second? Second by Mr. McGuire. And that would be, the motion is to have a 0 setback, but I don't think I can support it because the city staff has the use of that road. I'm more comfortable with 20. But I don't think we'd,
And as we think about, talking about the improvements of the road when it comes down the way, when you got curb and gutter in there, and if you're at 20 feet, it's gonna be tight too, trying to get a car.
the curb and gutter will be on the public right of way, on the edge of the lot line or inside that lot line. Say, Shane, if you're gonna develop, that's an 80-foot right of way,
Okay,
you would put how big of a street in there?
So typically, that would be a minimum of a 40-foot wide street. So you would end up with about a 20-foot boulevard on either side of that. But that boulevard is reserved, for
Sidewalks, trees.
sidewalks and trees and green space. And we have to think of this too. This particular region is right now storage units. But the next 2 blocks to the south may be some other commercial use other than this. And down there, we're gonna want to go back to your 40-foot setbacks, similar to other areas of town. So I don't know that, I mean, I can't say that it's gonna change use, but I gotta anticipate there's gonna be at least one business to the south that's not gonna be a storage unit. And I can't say that for sure, but I hate to, speculate.
Ken, can you pull that map up, or can you pull that down a little bit? So the Spies building's right now sitting on right on a zero setback now? Is that
On the street they are. yeah.
on your main building there?
On the Bill Neal office building there.
Yeah, the office building.
Yes.
My question is, Shane, what would change if all these other ones are already at a zero setback? What's gonna be the difference if these guys do it on a zero?
Well, because there have multiple driveway, or, you know, all of that whole frontage is garage doors. So think about how you pull into or out of or utilize a garage door. It takes you a solid 20 feet of straight maneuverability to even back into or pull out of one. So the closer you get to the right-of-way line, the more you're gonna compromise traffic on the street to get in and out of those units. So that's part of my concern. And then, like I said, going south of there, if we're gonna have a building with a 40-foot setback to accommodate parking for something else, you know, a boutique or an insurance agent or real estate agent, I'll throw them all out there. So, you know, that's what we're gonna ask for south of there, is the 40-foot frontage. And so that's where our standard lies. It's up to you folks to decide what compromise that you can live with. And, you know, I just want to make sure that we don't compromise all of our future plans just for this one request. And that's what I would like you to
I have
consider.
one more question. This is for Shane and Ken, and it's a little, oh, go ahead. Oh, no, this is a flood question, because I'm going back to that floodplain. And it's just something that I've seen happen a lot recently, and it's that if a person's intention is to build the property up to get it out of the floodplain or out of above the base flood elevation, the next step for that is, if you ever wanted to get it completely out of the flood zone with a letter of map amendment, there's a requirement that the adjacent grade is at 20 feet. You know, when that surveyor comes in and shoots that elevation has to stay above base flood elevation for 20 feet in all directions, doesn't it? Is that the number 20?
That is currently one of the ways to do it without an intensive study. You can have an engineer do a study, and maybe that becomes less than that. But the quick and easy way without the study is 20 feet.
The city will build the road below base flood elevation?
We can, yes.
You can. So the city could build the road lower than the flood elevation, but the property owner, if he wants to get that special letter from FEMA that excludes his property from the flood requirement for flood insurance, and makes it
Right.
cheaper if you buy it, it's gonna have to have 20 feet of ground on each side of that building,
That's above the
the
base flood elevation.
So you need to fill that area up.
Correct. And
Which
then we
means
have
if you go with too short of a setback and you're right on the city property, you've excluded that property from ever being eligible for that waiver.
Right.
That
I mean,
fair?
there are methods of flood proofing, as Ken alluded to, but that requires a registered PE to do that analysis as well.
So that would be another reason to build it further off the lot line. It might give the owner more options down the road.
Ask him a question. Ed?
What are you thinking?
Well, I just want to say, I would never say never, but that property for 2 blocks south of our south building there, that's all owned by Spice Corporation. And that would be tremendously expensive to develop. It's 5 or 6 feet below the grade of our south building.
Because we've talked
And
about
there's
that here
marsh,
before.
river.
Yeah.
It could be developed, but I will guarantee you that we are going to.
And that's in reference to extending that road to the south? Because we've talked about that before in this property over the last 10 years, that there's a lot of wetland-ish property back there, correct? Where that road would extend through.
There is some, that's correct.
So as I look at it, Mr. Albertson has a motion on the table with the 0 setback. In discussion, I'd say I'm not as comfortable with 0 as I am 20. I'm not over hard pressed on 40 either, but
The,
Commercial stuff that has narrower streets on it. Since these are all these 6 buildings are putting on that.
that would be to,
In,
question is to Shane, is it uncommon to go with a street narrow, you're saying narrower than 40 feet?
66 foot right.
Okay,
Instead
so
of 80.
we currently have 80 foot of right-of-way.
I do believe if 20 foot is suggested, that the applicant would be in favor of that.
What's the elevation again going, I mean, we know Ed just said it's 5 foot below, but
Well, that's an
As-
estimate, but
as-
it's low.
as Third continues farther south, I mean, is it a dip, does it come up gradual, or does it continue to drop?
Okay, so at a minimum, I mean, and I can't say that, I mean, it's hard to say never because we don't know. You know, Spice could sell this to somebody else that ultimately would find a way to make it economical to develop it. But at a minimum, I would expect Third Street to continue down to the intersection of 11th Avenue and make that the loop. And then,
Correct, but I mean, what, does it continue, the elevation to continue to drop, or does it start to raise again, or is it?
Can you put up
Without surveying,
a
I'd
the
speculate.
topographical map there? Ken?
Shane's computer's up right at the moment.
okay, I just turned the contours on, and these are 2-foot contours, so you can see that it's relatively flat because there aren't more than 1 or 2 contours in the whole area. So I would agree that generally it drops off, but by how much, it's certainly less than, it's 5 feet or less because there aren't more than 2 lines in there. So, but like I said, it would be challenging, but we've seen other requests come through that would change a site like this. I would presume, just frame of reference, and of course, I'm a short timer in this community, but I would guess that this whole area that the theater sat on at one time was lower and got built up with fill as well. So, I mean, so it's not ideal, but it's possible.
Thank you. So the motion is a 0 setback. Do you want to amend that, Dan?
Okay.
I'll amend it to be the 20-foot setback.
Jason, do you
That would be,
second that? Amend your second, or was it Blake or Jason that had the second? You amend your second? So that's right. Any discussion on the 20? Any questions, any problems? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion, or, excuse me, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries.
I want to thank everyone for the discussion, so I think we
And
can
of course,
live with this.
Protest, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Waiver the right to protest on curb, gutter, sidewalk, street. Any old business? How about new business?
We approved the 20 foot. Yes, I have some new business.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can find my, we've had a request and, I guess I have nothing.
All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. What's that?
I said you got one.
Oh, motion by Mr. Stein. Thought you had a golf tee time or something. Second by Mr. Dolly. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
They have to stay here.